Hello and welcome to The Last Tackle. 4 regular season games left, and for 10 clubs, the dream of reaching Old Trafford is still alive.
Yeah. Let's go. I go the hardest. I bring the pain.
Johnston with a flying finish.
It's all part of the game.
What a try that is from Leeds.
What strength to get that down.
Go hard. Go hard.
Yes, Saturday the 14th of October, the grand final. 4 games left. 2 men who know about winning the grand final, Amor and Paul Sculthorpe. Gents, first of all, Carl, what a season we're having. 10 teams in theory are battling for 6 places. I don't upset fans of Leeds, Huddersfield and Hull. I think it's probably more likely 6 from 7. But in theory, 10 teams can get these 6 playoff spots.
Yeah, sure, Mark. And like you say, while that dream's still alive, these clubs are going to be going hard after it, aren't they? I do agree with you. I think it's more like sort of 7 from 6, the 6 that are going to make it out of that. But there is a bit of hope for Leeds, Hull and Huddersfield. But, another loss for them, well, you'd imagine it's game over for them in 2023, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so 10 teams can reach the playoffs. And obviously, the other 2 sides, Castleford and Wakefield, who's going to go down? It's a brilliant season, isn't it?
It's a brilliant season. It's certainly going to go to the end, isn't it? And both at the top and at the bottom. Relegation. I think 2 points separating Wakefield and Castleford. So everything to play for, and it's going to go to the last week of the year, no doubt.
It's going to be a brilliant season. So 4 games left, and then we have the playoffs. But let's talk about St Helens. Obviously, these 2 know all about Saints. Unbeaten in August. Won at Castleford 34-10. Is this finding some consistency finally this season?
Well, the results tell you it is, isn't it? They've got those 5 wins that they've managed to get in a row, but they're just building momentum at the right time of the season, aren't they? So it seems crazy to think that they're sat in 3rd, and obviously they won the World Club Challenge. We all know about that, and it almost, it still seems to feel like that they've sort of stumbled away this season. But you look at it, the 2 points off top of the league. So I think that's more a reflection of them as a playing group, how consistent they'd been over the last 4 or 5 seasons, where any loss or any poor performance was almost magnified, Scully, really, wasn't it? So, but they're building momentum at the right time. However, there's still a month left to play.
Yeah, and I think, Saints, is it ominous for the opposition that they're coming into form? I still think there's a lot of improvement in that Saints team, and that is usually the sign of a great side, when you can not play poorly, but not be at your best and still win and win consistently well. And I think I was at the Hull KR game 2 weeks ago. First half was awful by both teams. Second half, Saints come out of the blocks and blew Hull KR away. And clearly, built on that this week against Castleford. Scored some great tries. Yeah, they're up against one of the the lower teams in Super League and some poor defensive displays there from Castleford. But if you can keep building on that, I think Saints' performances are only going to improve.
But that, that first half performance that Scully mentioned, how poor it was against Hull KR, I think they got a little bit of that this week. They got up 30 points to 0 in the first half against Castleford, and I want they finished 4-4 in the second half. So Wello, no doubt, will be driving his troops, making sure that isn't a common theme throughout the rest of the season, and that ultimately the 80-minute performances must come off the back of this as well.
Early season, you both mentioned discipline. That seems to have been sorted at Saints.
Yeah, it certainly has. I can't remember last time really that they caught multiple bans. Yes, teams pick up 1 or 2 along the way, they always do. But Wello, I've always said this, that when Wello's able to put his strongest sort of 17 out, there isn't many teams in the competition that fancy the chances or want to play them. So for him, hopefully he can get as many of those out there and they can finish the season strongly.
I think it's probably a bit of a learning curve as well for Saints on the discipline. I don't think they're an indisciplined side. I think with a lot of the rule changes within the game, so it was probably a learning curve into regard. We've talked about Saints for the last 5 years that one of their strengths was defensively, the aggressive line speed, getting in the face and upsetting teams. You've got to do it a bit more controlled now, and I think some of the players struggled with that initially. But obviously it's something.
Scully as well. I think the best teams and the best sportsmen, they manage to adapt over the years, don't they? They don't just stay the same player or the same team. And maybe this is a part where Saints have to sort of develop into where the game's going now and find new ways to challenge everybody else.
So, Saints unbeaten in August, but the performance of the weekend was definitely by Wigan in France.
Yeah. No,
34-0.
Yeah, we were saying.
I know you fancied Wigan. I don't think you thought they'd win 2-0 in France, did you?
No, definitely not. Definitely not by that margin. But I couldn't work out whether if Wigan were that good or were Catalan that bad. I'm more actually favouring, I don't want to take anything away from Wigan's performance, because to go out to Perpignan and score 34 points takes some doing. But I thought Catalan were really poor. I thought they were off. That their attitude wasn't quite right. There were players falling off tackles left, right, and centre. Patrick Mago, he looked unbelievable. It's the best game I've ever seen him play in a cherry and white shirt. So, but having said that, I think Steve McNamara will be furious with his troops. But you do get them performances every now and again. They have been very, very good this season, Catalan. Inevitably, you are going to get a drop off, but. At home against second place, that's probably not what you want to do.
I think 4 games from the end of the year as well, when you know you're going to come into playoffs, and that's going to be one of the teams you've got to beat if you want to win the grand final. You can't turn in a performance like that. And I agree with Kyle. Wigan can only play what's in front of them, and I thought they played well. They played really well. Catalan's defence was horrendous, and that left edge. I'm sure I wouldn't like to be in that video room this week.
Well, Steve McNamara said they were beating every single department.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And the one thing you're going to get with Wigan, they're resilient. They'll never ever give in. And I think, when you've got the quality of some of the players that they've got on that strike, they're going to be there and thereabouts. Yeah. We know that.
Oh, could it be a good thing for Catalan to chuck in 1-0 like that?
Well, yeah.
4 games to go and the playoffs about to start.
Yeah, I
remember a couple of years ago,
2020.
Saints playing
exactly.
Catalan at Magic.
That's it. That's exactly what I was going to refer to there, Matt. 2021, we had the game in the bag, and they scored. It's the craziest game I've ever been involved in. Yeah. They scored 3 tries in the final 5 minutes. Sam Cassiano puts it down, and then a drop kick goes over. And I remember that. Looking back, after the season, we almost identified that as if we'd have perhaps won that game. Would it have gave them a bit more fuel in the they
sometimes you need a kick up the arse.
Exactly, and so I do agree with you, Matt. I think that could be a good thing. I think sometimes when you win and you win and you win, 1 or 2 players, or you can almost come a bit complacent where that, and the fact that Steve McNamara said about questioning their effort and beating in all departments, that hurts as a playing group, doesn't it? Yeah. So, there will be a reaction off that for sure.
I think everybody spoke about Catalan all year, haven't they? Because they've pretty much been at the top of the league for a long while now. And like you say, sometimes as a player you can get a bit complacent and believe your own press. So that maybe is not a bad thing for Catalan in the running.
Catalan still top of the table, just by 2 points. Wigan second. I tell you what, points difference could come into it this season. It is that tight. Let's talk about the other games from round 23. Going back to Friday night, Salford 20, Wakefield 0. That's 2 on a bounce for Salford. After having slump, they lost 7 and now they've won 2 on a bounce.
Yeah, and they're one of those teams that are fighting with Hull KR and around that 6th, trying to get in that final playoff spot. But I did tip Salford for this game. I just thought the way they moved the ball, they'd outrun Wakefield all over the park, and 20 points to 0 says that. But they brought in Brad Singleton from Wigan, who's been he's helped stiffen up that middle, and he's had quite an impact already. So again, those are Salford are another one of them teams, Scully, that I know because they make you move as a middle, then you're in for you're gonna have to probably run further, move a little bit quicker. And those kinds of teams are the ones I hated playing against, because they were smart, intelligent footballers. And if Salford can build a bit of momentum going into that, they can maybe cause an upset in that place.
Yeah, I think Salford, they found a way, haven't they, to do something different than the other teams because of the personnel that they've got. Yeah. And I think, I totally agree with Kyle that, the way they move the ball about. But I watched this game and 3 of the Salford tries come off Wakefield mistakes. So you've got to look Wakefield in their own performance, and they're just struggling to convert into points, with their own attack.
And also on Friday night, we had a repeat of a Challenge Cup final. I fancied Hull KR, but not 52-10.
No, I think they blew the legs off Lee, didn't they, early? I think they probably had something to prove, and there's obviously a bit of a hangover for Lee on the back of Challenge Cup. We know we've been involved in them, not just physically, but mentally as well. You know, that draining. I mean, I'm sure Lee celebrated it in style as well. We've seen that.
Too right.
Rightly so.
Not won it
But
for
it can take
52
its toll.
years, yeah.
But now that has got, for Lee, that's got to come to an end, and it's got to be mind switched on now and back into, you know, to playing how they was. Can they do that?
The concern for me is that performance that Lee put in stunk of that was it for them. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I might be wrong.
Yeah.
You know, obviously they played against Catalan the week after. They went really well for the first half and then fell away, didn't they? Now, that performance that I've not, well, nobody's seen Lee play like that. I would be a bit concerned, me. You know, if I was a Lee fan now, I'd be a bit concerned that for the rest of the season, that the players, it looked like to me the playing group had mentally made a decision that you know, that they're really happy with what they've achieved, and it's happened to much bigger clubs. This, by the way, so this isn't an attack on Lee as a club or anything like that, but there is a definite mental shift there of such a high, and you talked about it first time in, what was it, 52 years. It takes some doing to bounce back and get back on the horse again at that. You know, there was a couple of tries scored as well, and the players were looking at each other in a bit of disgust as well, and it almost, I didn't like what I saw anyway, I'll put it that way. There's a huge challenge there for Adrian Lamb and Tony Clubb to get his men back to where they were.
And just got to give a mention to Ryan Hall, 35 years of age, 12 tries in 22, including another brace on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, he just keeps going, doesn't he? And he gets better. His game's kind of evolved as well, and you know, I don't particularly look at his try scoring. I look at everything else that he gives. You know, his backfield carry. You know, the way. I mean, he's as big as any player on that field. You know, an explosive. He's probably not got the blistering speed that he had back in his pomp at Leeds. But you know, what a player! And just, you know, I know the commentary team were talking about him on Sky about what the ultimate professional he is and the way he looks after, and that will pass on to everybody else in his team as well. So it's not so much as just what about he does, but the influence he has on everyone else around him, and he's playing well.
I said a performance of the weekend was Wigan. If you're a Warrington fan, you're probably going to think Warrington was performance of the weekend, because 7 defeats on the bounce. They beat Hull 18-4. Much needed win for Warrington.
Yes, definitely. I thought Hull FC would win this one. I thought Warrington was sort of, you know, perhaps just got into a bad rut of form, but you know, that's a good win, that over at Hull FC, sorry. And you know, I'm no doubt that Gary Chambers will be delighted with that. It gives the group a bit of a confidence. And again, look, you've only got to be in that 6. You've just got to time it right, haven't you? Now, if Warrington can put together, you know, a couple of wins now before the end of the season, again, that team and how they were performing at the start of the year, it's still there. Do you know what I mean? There's not really been too many. Yes, they lost Josh Maguire, but they've not really changed an awful lot. And you know, if George Williams can get back to the form he was in as well, and you know, they're a threat, massive threat.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't pretty at times, but George Williams was very good, wasn't he?
Yeah, you know, I mentioned Williams, Dufty, Thewlis. I think Warrington, when they play football, they've got a lot of talented players and a lot of skillful players. And I think probably the reins were off a bit, and go out and play with confidence. And I think you could see that in the performance.
And finally on Sunday, Huddersfield 21, Leeds 12. Look, Huddersfield can get in the playoffs. Leeds can get in the playoffs in theory. It's a bit too little too late for Huddersfield now, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. The points difference as well is almost worth an extra point as well, that they've got to try and claw back there. So, you know, I fancied Huddersfield at the start of the year, given the player roster that they had, but they almost had too many good players in key positions. Like, they almost had too many to pick from, and for whatever reason, one way or another, you know, can't forget that. I think it was at Leeds when Ian Watson done his post-match interview after they got beat by about 50, didn't it? That seemed to sort of, you know, help Huddersfield there. But I agree, too little, too late, and I think it's probably too little, too late as well for Leeds Rhinos. Leeds have been really inconsistent this year, haven't they?
They have, you know, and it's not, for me, it's not acceptable for a club like Leeds as well. You know, the players that they've got, you know, the money they spend, you know, they won't be happy with 8th place, and certainly not making the playoffs, which it's looking likely they won't.
So the race for the playoffs in the Betfred Super League are well and truly on, but the playoffs in League One start this weekend. Live and exclusive, Doncaster versus Oldham, and then we'll show a playoff a week, including the final in League One. So Sportsman is your home of Rugby League. Now go and hit that like button.
You're watching the Sportsman Rugby League,
the home of Rugby League online.
Subscribe for exclusive live games from the Betfred Women's Super League and Challenge Cup.
Right, a really serious matter to deal with now. The RFL released his statement this week. Tony Sutton, the chief exec. All in the Sport will condemn the appalling abuse which Marcus Griffiths has received on social media. I'm just reading a bit of a statement. Homophobic abuse is a hate crime and punishable by law. We want to be clear that any kind of discriminatory abuse is not welcome in our sport, and we will take the strongest possible action against perpetrators who can be identified. Our match officials work under intense scrutiny and pressure. We owe it to them as a governing body and also as a sport to support them at all times. Obviously, not good have got to release a statement, but a good, strong statement from Tony Sutton.
Yeah, for sure, and he's bang on with everything he says. Look, it's 2023 now, and we've as a society we need to start owning what we say. Do you know what I mean? You can't just go and throw stuff out or tweets out and just expect that it's okay. You know, it is abuse. It's not right, and it's not wanted in our game. So we pride ourselves on the game of rugby league being a family sport, an inclusive sport. And for me, you know, Sutton's bang on. There's no need for it whatsoever.
I think we've got to applaud the RFL releasing this statement.
Yeah, brilliant. You know, and you've got to make a stance like that. And it's, as Carl said, it's not acceptable in society, and certainly not within our game. You know, our game's always prided itself on the cultures and the behaviours. You know, the respect of the officials, and you know, social media. You know, it can be an awful thing at times, and you know, people like this, you know, should be held accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And let's hope they get banned from every rugby league ground going. Let's hope the police get them, because I've seen the messages. They are absolutely appalling. And without officials, we don't have a game.
There's no game. You know, there's no game. And again, we'll go back to the values that right from when you're a sort of grasshopper high, you get told that you get told to respect the referee. Right from under 7s, 8s, 9s, whatever he says, that's it. And we have to respect everybody in our game. You know, fans, players, you know, coaches, all major stakeholders in the game. And abuse it's just not wanted.
Well done to the RFL for releasing that statement. Right then, let's turn our attention back to the action. A cracker on Friday night live on Sky. Wigan versus Salford Red Devils. Yeah, looking forward to watching this live on Sky on Friday night. Wigan versus Salford. Right then, Carl. Wigan have had a great win in France. Salford, after having a slump, have won the last two. Should be a decent game on Sky. And also so much to play for. Salford in 6th, Wigan in 2nd.
Yeah, you know, you've painted it well there, isn't it? So, I think Wigan, off the back of that win last week, I feel they're just going to get into the groove now. I think they'll have a little bit too much for Salford. However, I don't think it'll be a blow-away score by any stretch. You know, Salford have got some great players in form at the moment. Ryan Brayley, he just can't stop scoring at the moment. But yeah, I think Wigan get the job done at home.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game, as you say. Everything to play for. You know, Wigan will up and Catalan slip up, and they can take top spot, and Salford are, you know, trying desperately to get in that top 6. So I think it's going to be a great game, and two different styles as well. We know Wigan pride themselves off the defence, off the solid stuff through the middle, and Salford have got to find a way of breaking that down. And we've already spoke about how creative they can be, and some of the the strike players that they've got. So I think it's set to be a great game. There's great history between these two clubs as well.
It certainly is. Well, obviously they met in the playoffs recently, didn't they?
Yeah.
Salford won that.
Yeah, and that's it. And you know, it's times like this where you're coming into the business end of the season. You know, you don't know what's going to happen, and that's the great thing with the season this year.
These are the games we wanted, though, isn't it? Yeah. You know, we're sort of 4 games away.
We want jeopardy,
Wigan,
don't we?
Wigan can try and knock Catalan off. Salford are desperate to get in the 6. You know, there's so much opportunity for both sides going forward that this is why it's going to make a great game on Friday night.
And if Wigan are leading, then you're going to probably go on the app and have a look at the Hull KR Catalan score, aren't you?
Yeah. Look, Hull KR is an incredibly difficult place to go. Off the back of a huge win last week, they're another one scrapping. Catalan need a reaction.
They're just out of the playoffs at the moment.
Yeah.
Just
out. So they're hoping that Wigan do a job and they can sneak in there over Salford. And yeah, again, it's just, we spoke about it last week when we were looking at all the fixtures. There's just so much left to play for still, that this is exactly what we want. If you could have created this scenario at the start of 2023 and said we're 4 games left to go, there's 3 teams that could finish top, there's 7 teams that can get into 10 teams, as you mentioned, can get into the 7, and we still don't know who's going to get relegated, we'll be all rubbing our hands.
I think this Hull KR Catalan games are a really intriguing game, because it's going to be interesting to see how Catalan bounce back from that defeat.
Are you leaning for Hull KR?
I'm leaning for a Hull KR win. I think it's up in the east of Hull. It's a tough place to go. They're coming on the back of a great win. They've played some good form recently, and I just think it's going to test Catalan's mentality this weekend.
Yeah,
are you going to tip Hull KR as well?
Oh. Yeah, I am actually. I am. I definitely think there's going to be a reaction from Catalan. I definitely think they will. Whether Hull KR's pack can handle that, that remains to be seen. But their outside backs are in great form. You mentioned Ryan Hall, Sean Kenny-Dowell, who's another huge player for Hull KR. Farewell season. Yeah. Look, I've no doubt that behind the scenes they'll be wanting to make sure that he can carry on playing another few more games and not just end outside of the top 6 and 7th as well. So, look, it's very, very difficult to call. I could see Catalan turning up, and I could see Catalan putting in a solid performance and blowing Hull KR away. But I'm gonna listen to Scully, and I'm gonna follow him and think.
I think
that
it's a lot on the start as well. I think Hull KR are a team that grow in confidence if they start quick. They've got that energy, haven't they? Some of the younger players, you like some Mikey Lewis and players like that. I just think Hull KR start well. I think they could take it.
Also on Friday night, you've mentioned this already. Leigh Huddersfield. This is crucial for Leigh now, isn't it?
Yes, and it's crucial for Huddersfield. Again, we're just saying the same thing over the course of 3 different fixtures, but that's where we are. So, I think it is crucial for Leigh. I think another lot. They have got losses in them. They can't afford to lose again. Do you know what I mean? That is fine to say. A lot
of the good work's undone, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, but there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's a big job really for Adrian Lamb. You imagine leading up into the momentum they had and the season they were having, and selling them the dream that they could become champions of the Challenge Cup for the first time in 52. A lot of that takes it mentally out of you. I'm not too sure whether that playing group has got the ability to go again. That's what I'm saying. So on this game, I'm going to sound stupid here now, but I think Leigh win this game against Huddersfield. But I just question whether they've got it in them to go again.
What would you say if you're Adrian Lamb then, Scully?
I think just go back to what you were doing a month ago. The things that were winning your games, the energy levels, the ruthlessness on the field. Go back. Forget about Challenge Cup. It's gone. You've enjoyed it, and it'll always be there in the history books. But now it's about Super League, and don't throw away everything good that they've done this year. What are they on? 28 points. They've had 14 wins this year so far. Don't throw all that away now just because of what you've done in the Challenge Cup.
Right, Saturday, Warrington versus Castleford live on Sky. This is massive for Warrington. Look, if they win this, it all should guarantee the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you forget. I was looking at the league table.
And then it's such a roller coaster season.
Warrington are in 5th at the moment, when they've lost
7.
7 of the last 8 games, but obviously we look at the great start that they had. But this is a must-win for Warrington, not only for league positioning and everything else and points, but for mentality going into the running and the playoffs, because Castleford, they're having an awful year. Yeah. They were awful last week against St Helens, and this is a game. If Warrington are going to do anything in Super League, the remainder of Super League this year, this is a game that they've got to win. They've got to win convincingly.
Yeah, you mentioned it. If they win this, that'll be the talk. If we win this, we're almost guaranteed playoffs. And I mentioned what I said earlier on. That squad of Warringtons is a threat. It's a threat in the playoffs. And again, everything's all about momentum this time of year. There's plenty of teams that have rode a wave and won grand finals. I'll mention Leeds. They won it from fifth multiple times. You just have to be in it. You have to be in it. Get your best players playing.
Going out of the playoffs last year and then snuck in.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
With about 5 minutes to go, wasn't it? Home to Castleford.
You just don't know. You've got to time it right. Your players have got to be, in great form. There's a load of different things that need to fall into place. But none of that can happen if you're not in the playoffs. So I still think Warrington are going to be a huge threat on this season for St Helens' title. But I think they'll win at Castleford. I think they'll win against Castleford. No issues about that. But they've still got a chance, and everybody's been laughing at them when they fell away after that first 9 rounds. But again, they've got it within them for sure.
Hull FC Leeds on Saturday.
Again, it's almost whoever loses, trapdoor now, isn't it? You're gone. If you lose, whoever loses this game is gone. I think Hull win this game. I think obviously the home advantage there, and the fact that I just think that Leeds has a lot of players leaving, isn't there? Blake Austin, Caesar, Sam Walters, and there just seems to be a bit of it screams out that they just want the season over, reset, rebuild, and go again for 2024.
But they've put in some huge performances, haven't they? I remember when they were at Wigan.
Yeah, they have.
To 12 men and won the second half.
I think that's the frustrating thing for the Leeds fans, no doubt, is what they are capable of. When they do perform, but they've lost 4 of the last 5. I agree with Kyle. I think Hull FC will win this game based on home advantage, and you look at Hull FC and them themselves have been inconsistent, haven't they? They've won 4 of the last 8. 50% wins when they're better than that. They proved that against Saints a month ago when they beat Saints by 30 points. But you're just not backing that up consistently. Just
in my time of playing Super League, Scully, though, we say about Hull FC, but for me, too often they're just all packaging and no product. They always seem to finish around about that 50-60% ratio wins. They may get in the playoffs and they may not, but they don't really seem to. Look, they've had a couple of Challenge Cup wins and that's great, but when you're talking about champion sides, you need to show consistency and you need to improve year on year, at least show that. And for me, far too often, they haven't really done that.
Right, one game left to talk about on Sunday, Wakefield, St Helens.
It's a tricky one, this. Honestly,
it's not our favourite place to go.
No, but and 4 weeks ago, you fancy Wakefield more, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, but traditionally, look, I've played at Saints and I played at Wakefield, and I know when I was at Wakefield, when the big clubs used to come, we used to thrive on that because you'd almost get a gauge on them first 10 minutes where they were at mentally. Were they all prepared to roll the sleeves up and get into the tough parts of the game that Wakefield would thrive in them situations? But look, traditionally, St Helens, it's not been an easy or a happy hunting ground there. So I don't think this game is as clear as is a clear favourite in it at all. I might sound ridiculous saying that, but
and they play after Castleford, of course, Wakefield, don't they?
Well, yeah, and when Wakefield are down, when they look like they've got absolutely no hope, they just have a funny knack of just scalping the top side, don't they?
They do. I think going off history, we've gone down at Wakefield many a time, and I think it's a massive challenge of Saints mentality this week. That's all it is. Saints play well, Wakey play well, Saints win easy. If Saints don't perform, don't turn up with the right attitude, it'll be a tough day at the office. And I just think Saints will turn up. They've got to, if you're going to go into these last few games, and you still want to get that league leaders shield. It's a club that demands success, and they want as much silverware as they can.
I agree with
hoping that anybody else slips up. And this is a game that you've got to go with that champion mentality. And you're playing bottom of the league, ultimately. You've got to go and blow them away with your performance.
Team talk done.
Yeah, no, I agree with Scully on that. I think if Saints do their very best, they win comfortably. But again, it is a challenge going there. But I think off the back of those 4 wins that St Helens have done, they went to a similar ground last week at Castleford. I agree with Scully. If they're going to show that they're ready to attack the final part for the League Leaders Shield, this is a must-win and a good performance as well.
Right, blockbuster end to the Betfred Super League season, and then we've got some England internationals. Yes, looking forward to those internationals. Right then, we started it. The beginning of the show. How excited are you for the end of the season?
Massively, massively. Again, everything to play for. Loads of twists and turns. There'll be bumps in the roads and casualties along the way again, even inside this last 4 weeks. And you know, I'm looking forward to be able to sit back and watch it all unfold.
And with your Saints hat on, you started a season like that, then went like this, went like that, and now you're like this. Is that right?
Yeah. Do you know what? And it's a marathon, isn't it? Not a sprint. And I think it's how you finish the year. You know, finish as high as you can in the playoffs, and then it's 2 or 3 games that you've got to win, and you're at Old Trafford. So, no, I totally agree. I just think there's everything to play for. There's, in these next few weeks of trying to get in that top 6, who's going to get the league leaders, who's going to get relegated.
Round 24 should be a cracker. See you next week.